Elewa katiba jenga nchi yako. Elewa katiba jenga nchi yako. K-Nice inakufafanulia. Katiba nawe jenga nchi yako. Ni wakati wa kujinice na K-Nice uielewe. Katiba nawe jenga nchi yako.
Hello again, I'm Smirti Virdiyadhi Mwongera. Well, now that the new government is taking shape, devolution is a key factor in ensuring that all the 47 counties get their fair share of services. Also important is devolution that the President Uhuru Kenyatta has created an entire ministry for it. And just to help us understand more about this type of governance, K-Nice, the Kenya National Integrated Civic Education, is playing its role in educating Kenyans all about devolution. Well, tonight I am joined by Susan Mwongera. She is the CEO of the Youth Agenda, and also by Joash, Dache, the Secretary of the Kenya Law Reform Commission. Good evening, and thank you both so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Susie.
And let me just invite our viewers to this conversation as well. If you would like to comment on this discussion, or if you have any questions, you can tweet us on @NTV Kenya, but you can also follow K-Nice on Twitter. That is @KNice Kenya, KNICE Kenya. You can find them on Facebook, K-Nice Kenya, or you can get more information on their website, knice.go.ke, or of course find more information about them on the IEBC website. All right, well, once again, a very warm welcome to you. Obviously, devolution is what a lot of us are seeing when we watch television and listen to the President create a ministry of devolution, and when we listen to the National Assembly and parliamentarians or members of parliament discussing a devolved government. But for those who perhaps have no idea what devolution is, perhaps we can start off with that. And Joash, can you define devolution?
Thank you, Smirti. Thank you, viewers, for joining us for the show. I'm a lawyer, so I'll want to put this in very plain terms, not lawyerly language. But devolution, federalism, centralization, deconcentration are terms that you normally associate with organization of state or government power. The basic premise of devolution is basically this. You want to look at the extent to which the traditional powers of the state, the power to tax, the power to spend, the power to contribute and distribute resources, the power to enforce rights, the extent to which these traditional powers of the state have either been dispersed to other levels of government or concentrated at the center. At the extreme end, you have federal system of government, where most of these powers are basically being dispersed to other levels of government. At the other end, we have the unitary government, where all these powers are concentrated in the central government. In between, there are many variations. The model that Kenya has adopted is what we call cooperative government. Local governance at the county level, shared governance at the national level within one republic. That's what we have adopted in our new constitution.
Okay, and Susan, why did Kenya decide to adopt this form of governance? What makes devolution so important, and how does it essentially help Kenyans or members of a nation?
The first thing, of course, and the reason why we actually all wanted to actually vote for a new constitution is because we're concerned about the unequitable distribution of resources in Kenya, where some people used to enjoy more resources, or actually used to access more resources than actually other people. And we had a lot of complaints, and even when you actually wanted to complain, the only place you'd have actually gone to complain is at the national level. And at the national level, then you actually don't even meet anyone. You only meet a ministry that is so concentrated on so many things, and they were actually not able to meet people's needs. So of course the first reason why we actually wanted devolution, so that we can actually have equitable distribution of resources at the local level. The second and the very most important thing is that we also realized that there were the marginalized groups and the minority groups again who had been left out from the processes of actually accessing the services that are supposed to actually be provided for by their government. So again, because of that, then we really wanted a situation, as he said, power that is actually given to the people to be able to manage their affairs in a more equitable way, again, as I said earlier. The third thing is that for a long time people were also complaining about the lack of power, that you actually don't have power to influence anything that you wanted to be done in this country, yet you actually paying taxes as a Kenyan. So again, for purposes of ensuring that we actually self-rule ourselves, then we actually given, or we gave ourselves those units at the local level, where you actually have, not only have just a boundary, but you also have resources that will actually come from the national government, but also that you can actually generate. And that's something that people need to know, that not all the money will actually be coming from the national government as part of the national revenue, but we'll also actually have to actually generate our own income, whether it's through entertainment, importation taxes, whatever.
And that's per county.
And that's per county. And as it is right now, we have two types of government, but in one, because we actually have to promote national unity. That's one of the guiding principles and the objectives of devolution. One, of course, is the local government, which we all participated by ensuring that we actually have a governor and we have the county ward representatives then representing us at the local level. But of course, we have other appointive positions, I know, which we'll actually be discussing later in terms of who then is at the local level and also who is at the national level. But again, what we need to know is that even at the local level, we even have each county is supposed to actually have its own flag. It's supposed to have its own identity.
Is it all almost supposed to be its own little country within Kenya?
You don't even need to actually ask for anyone's permission to do the things that you actually want to do, as long as you're guided by the constitution, which has the 14 functions. Again, you cannot go overboard and start implementing the functions of the national government. You actually have to restrict yourself to the 14 functions of the county government. All
right, Joash, you're about to say something.
Yeah, the way to look at it is basically that in Kenya today, after the 4th of March general elections, we have 48 governments, one national government and 47 county governments.
And we're actually already seeing that, because we are seeing governors who are elected and deputy governors and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
So if we look at the bigger picture of Kenya, yes, we have a president, a deputy president, and the executive that is made up of cabinet secretaries. So is that going to be broken down in the very same way in each county? Can you paint a picture of the hierarchy of a county?
Absolutely. Whatever you see at the national level, the three traditional arms of government, you have the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. What you've done in devolution is that we have devolved two arms of government. The legislature, represented by the county assembly, and the executive, represented by the governor and his or her executive committee. And therefore, what the president does at the national level is what the governor does at the county level. Of course, the governor presides over a smaller territorial entity. The president presides over the larger territorial entity. That is the Republic of Kenya. And then the oversight that Parliament, the National Assembly, and the Senate has over the national executive is the same oversight that county assemblies have over the county executive. Basically, the sovereign power of the Kenyan people is exercised at two levels of government. At the national level, where you elect national leadership, the presidency, and all those other people. And then at the county level, where you elect the governor, the ward representatives, and they have their own system of government.
All right. Okay, let me just remind our viewers that have perhaps just joined us. You are watching an interview with K-NICE representatives, the CEO of the Youth Agenda, that's Susan Mwongera, and Joash Dache, the Secretary of the Kenya Law Reform Commission. We're talking about governance and we're talking about devolution in particular. If you have any questions or comments, you can always follow K-NICE on Twitter. K-NICE is, of course, the Kenya National integrated civic education. And the KNICE Twitter account is at KNICE Kenya. You can follow them on Facebook. Their account is KNICE Kenya. You can go to their website, www.knice.go.ke. And this conversation is ongoing, so please feel free to tweet us in if you do have any questions. All right, back to this topic of devolution. You are saying, Joash, that it is almost like running an entire country in a county. That's not going to be easy. So what are, Susan, I'll turn to you, what are some of the major challenges that our counties are going to face?
The first thing, and which is actually what the T has actually been doing for the last 1 year, they'll continue doing it for the next 3 years, is that they actually want to find out our capacity, whether we actually have capacities as Nairobi County before we actually given the powers and the mandate to actually then be able to discharge certain functions. And as you've heard, they've only, I think, only transferred a few functions like fire extinguisher, the fire extinguisher, and a few other
disaster
management. Not everything
control
has actually been transferred, because they actually have to assess the capacity that we have as a county. The second challenge, of course, that we'll likely face, that we all are expecting to find very good roads, very good sanitation done around our county, without understanding that we have to have a budget, without understanding that we actually have to prioritize our needs as a county. The county government, in this case now the governor, also has to be very clear in terms of the vision and actually what is expected. But the citizens also have to be involved, because they actually have to consult.
And how can they be involved? How can Kenyans be involved with devolution?
Devolution. In fact, one of the things that is very critical is that you were involved by first electing the people that you elected on the 4th of March. So if you elected the wrong people, then you can only blame yourself for participating, not in a very good way, but giving us people who can actually not be able to deliver. The second most important thing is that you also have to participate by either applying for certain jobs. Like now, they were actually advertising for the county executive committee. They were actually advertising for the public service board. So again, did you apply for those positions? Are you ready to offer your technical expertise? Because they require technical expertise for them to actually be able to do the things that they're supposed to actually do. The third other way for us to participate is attending some of the activities of the forums that actually will be convened. In fact, the governor has a responsibility of convening public forums, town hall meetings, others even through technology, to ensure that the public accesses information, but more importantly is also involved in influencing policy at the county level. Now, Article 87 of the the County Government Act is very clear on public participation. So it's not one of those things that we used to say before, you can choose not to consult. It's actually a requirement for you to consult with the public before you make any plans. And what I'd actually say is that we need to be more vigilant, be more, participate more, be more educated in terms of actually what is really expected of us as citizens to be able to influence what is actually happening at the county level. So then if you observe something that is actually not going on very well, like I for example, have actually observed of late that even when we're talking about affirmative action, measures being taken to ensure that we also have youth representation, there are counties that have not recruited or nominated some young people at the county executive committee. So what is my role? It is to write to the governor of that place and tell them, remember that the constitution says that you actually need to do 1, 2, 3 things. Right. So that is part of participation. You actually don't need to do so much in terms of participation. It's just those general things that me and you can actually do from where we sit.
Well, this is a huge change for Kenya. Yeah. It's a huge task that we are undertaking, but there is an authority in charge of helping this transition, and that is, of course, the Transition Authority. What is their exact role in this area?
Thank you for that question. I happen to be a member of the Transition Authority.
Okay.
I sit in for PS Justice as an alternate member. Basically, the Transition Authority is the entity that has been given the responsibility by virtue of the transitional provisions in the Constitution to midwife, coordinate the transition from the highly centralized system of government that we had before the elections to the new devolved system of government. They are going to do this in a number of ways. One, the Transitional Authority is in charge of conducting or undertaking functional analysis. You see, in the first heading to the Constitution, we have two parts. Part 1, we have functions of the national government. Part 2, you have functions of the county government in very broad terms. When you look at some of these functions carefully, you realize that certain functions are exclusive to either level of government. Other functions are concurrent. They are shared between the two levels of government. Other functions are residual. They are not mentioned anywhere in the fourth schedule, which means they belong to the national government. It is the responsibility of the transitional authority to undertake clear functional analysis to ensure that each level of government has the necessary competency to perform that particular function. The other responsibility of the transitional authority is to conduct audit of assets. Remember, previously you had the central government, then you had the local authorities.
And that is going to be taking place because last week I remember I did an interview with the chair of the Transitional Authority, and he said that they are going to start having a look at public land that has been grabbed and looking at each county to see what assets that they do have.
Absolutely. So that's a very critical function, audit of assets. Another critical function is making arrangements for public servants. Remember that we had employees of local authorities who, when we conducted the last general elections, were now deemed to be employees of the county government. At the same time, you had public servants performing functions which have now been devolved to county governments at the district or provincial level. Arrangements for transfer, deployment, secondment of this staff has to be done, and the responsibility for doing this is with the Transitional Authority, the Public Service Commission, and the line ministries.
All right, and whilst we are talking about public servants, in our news we just delivered this evening, a lot of them from the counties are, looking up to members of parliament and doing the same thing. They want more money, they want higher salaries, and the president very well said that, first deliver services and then perhaps, we'll think about it. What do you make of that sort of an attitude? Fair enough, some may be unemployed during this period of transition, but those public servants who are already asking for a pay hike, briefly, what do you make of that kind of an attitude? Because it's all coming because of this devolved system of governance, essentially.
In my view, I know that everyone all the time negotiates their salary when you're getting a new job. And I know that's actually one of the things that actually they're also trying to do. They're trying to negotiate and place themselves in a place where they can actually be able to enjoy very nice benefits. But the unfortunate thing is that with this constitution, we gave the powers of setting up the salaries to the Salary and Remuneration Commission, not the parliamentarians as it was before, where they actually used to do it for themselves and not to actually think about other people. But I think the most important thing is for any person who is working as a public officer or a state officer needs to remember that actually their role is to provide services to the people, not so much about being power and earning so much money. And I think that's one of the things that we need to keep reminding them about what Chapter 6 of the Constitution critically says about who a public officer, who a state officer is. That's the first and the most important thing. The second thing is that by now we should actually, in fact, for them, they should actually be asking themselves, how do I make more money so then I can actually be able to enjoy those kinds of benefits, have a good house, have a good salary, even as I do my work. Not so much about first because where are you getting the money from? You're getting that money from taxpayers' money. It's not money that is actually generated from any profit. So it's very unfortunate that we're actually having those discussions now, while they should actually be thinking about how they actually need to make more money for themselves and even for the people of Kenya as part of providing services to them. So I think for me, it's a greediness that we've actually had when we are coming in as leaders, because if they all knew that they were actually going to earn at least around this amount of money because the first draft was actually out before the elections were done. But more importantly, as we were discussing actually with Josh outside there, that the Salary and Remuneration Commission has also not shared all the information, so then we can actually get to know what benefits accrue with the basic salary that they're supposed to be given. Because you heard about some of the people, the members of parliament who are actually going to get a 7 million loan for a car. The other benefits, which come with either, whether it's medical allowance or whatever it is, or sitting allowances. There are so many allowances that they're actually going to enjoy more than anyone else, and they're not very clear. So if I think that is also shared with the public, it will be easier for us to be able to appreciate what we already have and what we don't have.
All right.
But I think we actually need to reconsider and keep, I think that the thing is also, as part of public participation, is keep saying no, 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 so until it gets to them that they're actually not supposed to actually be.
Josh, do you share the same sentiments?
Absolutely, I agree with the president. When you ask the question, some of the challenges we are likely to face with in reference to this new system of devolved government, high recurrent expenditure is actually one of the issues which may undermine implementation of devolution. Luckily for us as a country, we have the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, which sets and reviews the salaries of state officers without reference to anyone, and recommend the salaries of other public officers to both levels of government. What is interesting is this: once the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has set the salaries of state officers and has recommended the salaries for other public officers, then that is binding, because the Salaries and Remuneration Commission is required to ensure that the total public wage bill is fiscal. You cannot do this possibly if everyone wants a salary. But I wanted to appeal to our elected leaders that we must respect institutions. When members of parliament threaten to disband the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, you may set up in motion an irreversible process. Next time it will be the CIC, next time it will be the IBC. Is that what the framers of the Constitution intended? As for county representatives, the ward representatives that we've heard from news reports, others have gone on strike, this is what I wanted to tell them. There is a provision in the Constitution, Article 192, on suspension of county governments. This has been given effect in the County Governments Act. There's a procedure to be followed. And the county governments means the county executive and the county assembly. When the county government is suspended by the president, it is both the executive, the governor, and the executive committee, and the county assembly.
So what impact would this then have on a county?
There is a provision. So what I wanted to say is that, you purporting that you are on strike, not knowing that causing paralysis in the administration or service delivery may actually occasion your suspension.
Right.
And when you are suspended for over 90 days and let the Senate intervenes, there'll be elections before you come back into office.
If at all you come back into office.
When a county is suspended, the president is required to put in an interim county management board.
Okay.
All right. Because remember, it is not only the elected leaders. You are going to have other public officers in the county. In fact, below the executive committee member, probably for agriculture or health, that's been appointed by the governor, you have a chief officer, which at the national level equates to a principal secretary. Then below that, you have other county public servants. The county, the interim management board will basically play the role of the county executive committee during the period of suspension.
All right, so the ultimate message there is to the county, the representatives, or at least the public servants, just carry on with your job, provide the services, and you will of course reap what you sow. All right, a reminder to our viewers that you are watching NTV. This is a program sponsored by KNICE, that is the Kenya National Integrated Civic Education, and we are discussing devolution. You can follow KNICE on Twitter on @KNICE Kenya. You can also find them on Facebook, KNICE Kenya, or go to their website for more information. That's www.knicekenya, or rather just knice.go.ke. Stay with us. We take a short breather, but plenty more when we return.
Elewa katiba jenga nchi yako. Elewa katiba jenga nchi yako. KNICE inakufafanulia. Katiba nawe jenga nchi yako. Ni wakati wa kujinice na KNICE uielewe. Katiba nawe jenga nchi yako. Elewa katiba, jenga nchi yako. Elewa katiba, jenga nchi yako. K-Nice inakufafanulia. Katiba nawe, jenga nchi yako. Ni wakati wa kujinice na K-Nice uielewe. Katiba nawe, jenga nchi yako.
Welcome back to NTV. This is a discussion on devolution. My guests here tonight, Susan Mwongera, the CEO of the Youth Agenda, and also Joash Dache, the Secretary of the Kenya Law Reform Commission. We are speaking about devolution, and you can get more information from the K-Nice website, www.knice.go.ke, or follow them on Twitter at K-Nice Kenya. All right, let's continue with this discussion about devolution in each county. We've spoken about what it means, what some of the challenges are going to be, but let's just zoom in to some of the counties, because let's not forget there are 47 counties. Each of them are very different. Some of them have a lot more resources than others. Let's take Isiolo, for example, and compare it with the county of Mombasa. What are some of the challenges that Mombasa will face that Isiolo might not face, and will different counties be able to borrow or share services from other counties? Susan?
Of course, and that's provided for actually in the Constitution and also in the laws. Some of the laws actually, whether it's the County Government Act is actually very clear on that. Because remember that we actually said one of the key principles or the objectives of devolution was actually to ensure that there's national unity in diversity. That's a very good, important thing for us to remember as a country. So it means that as one county is richer compared to the other, depending on actually what you have, whether it's land that you have or you have a river that other people don't have, then you have no choice but to share, because we are one country, but of course with different, we're just trying to ensure that everyone is able to enjoy their services closer home. So yes, we'll be sharing, even for example, like the judiciary, where I know every county is supposed to actually have a high court, so then you can actually be able to discharge your issues at that local level. But for some time, we have no choice but to share. The unfortunate thing is that the way it was before is that Garissa, if you're detained or there was a court case when you're in Garissa, you'd actually have to go all the way to Isiolo or to Meru for you to actually be addressed. But now it's going to come closer. But Wajir and Garissa can actually share court. Wajir and Garissa can also share hospital, because remember that we also have some hospitals that will not be built. We can't have all the hospitals built at the same time, because not less than 15% of the national revenue is not a lot of money. Like now, they've already only been given 204 billion. That is actually going to the county level. So that is not as much money for now, because you still have to generate your own income. So yes, we are going to share resources, and I think people just need to be open and friendly with the other to ensure that we actually do that, because we're also going to share even the public servants. As Josh said, that one of the terms of reference of TA is also to deploy and to second people to actually go to the county level. The way it is in the Act, it actually says that we should not have more than 30% of one group, ethnic community domineering in the public service. So the idea is actually to ensure that everyone also gets an opportunity to serve another county. So even that in itself is actually also just sharing the resources that we have. So yes, it's going to be done, and we just need to be open and willing to do, even if it's a road, because there's one county that can actually do a road, but remember that some roads are linked, so you won't tarmac yours up to this level because that's right, where my boundary is,
and then
stop it there. So, and people have to use those roads as they access their services.
By what you're saying, it seems that a lot of people across various counties have a lot to look forward to. Yeah. But the big question is, how soon is all this going to happen? I know we've already started seeing the effects of devolution, but the physical effects, the fact that, yes, okay, I'm in Isiolo, you're in Garissa, but I can share your hospital. How soon are people on the ground going to feel the effects of devolution?
As soon as the first intergovernmental relations entity, that is a summit, meets. There is what we call the Intergovernmental Relations Act.
And is there a date for that yet?
Not yet. I wanted to explain.
Okay.
The Intergovernmental Relations Act basically is to give effect to Article 6 of the Constitution. What Article 6 says is that the two levels of government are distinct and interdependent. and must conduct their mutual relations in a manner that promotes cooperation and consultation. To give effect to that, there are a number of institutions which have been created by the Intergovernmental Relations Act. One is the summit. The summit brings together the president and 47 county governors sitting in one room to discuss matters of national importance. There are processes now already in place for the president and the governors to meet as the summit. Below the summit, there's the Council of Governors, and this is where the sharing of services comes in. The Council of Governors. This basically brings together all the 47 county governors to discuss matters that affect their counties. Remember, in the Constitution, under Article 189, county governments and the national government may form joint authorities, committees, etc. for service provision. Look at across county resources. Water, for example. We stay in Nairobi. The water that we use in Nairobi comes from Kiambu. Those are two different counties. Right. You have the Kiambu or Thika Services, Water Services Board. Then you have the Nairobi Water Service Company, etc. County governments can actually form, the two county governments can actually form one joint water board. It is allowed by the Constitution. So they are going to share these services. So I was saying that for this to take effect, the summit is going to meet, is already in place because the president is there and the 47 county governors. The Council of Governors actually met and elected one of their own. Governor Ruto is actually the chair of the Council of County Governors. And by virtue of that act, the chair of the Council of County Governors is actually the vice chair of the summit. You see the interdependence between the two levels of government.
Okay, Susan, there is a possibility that this could all create a lot of confusion. Is that true?
Of course, it's going to create a lot of confusion because one of the things that we've actually observed as at now is that there's a lot of competition between one county with another. And I'm sure you actually had, like, one of the one that is actually performing very well is the Machakos County. You know, they're the first ones to actually set up their county executive committee. They're the first ones to actually have also invited investors, you know, international investors to actually come and invest in that county. Nairobi County also wants to prove itself that we're actually better than anyone else. So of course that competition is healthy in itself, but can also be very dangerous if we don't appreciate where the governors are also coming from, or what, or actually understanding the roles of each of those bodies. Because remember, as Josh said earlier, that the county executive committee is like what we had as ministries in Nairobi. Yeah, with the central, with the centralized system of government that we actually used to have. So the county assembly have a bigger role to legislate law, because that's actually one of the roles that they actually have for the county. So they're actually supposed to, a ward representative, for example, needs to start thinking and asking themselves is, what are the needs of my people? Because I also need to come and develop plans for that county, and also provide oversight of actually what the county executive committee is also doing. The county executive committee, on the other hand, is supposed to also perform its job with the performance contract that used to actually be done, because they're still public servants, even if they're actually hired by the county government itself. And the governor also needs to be very clear. But the senator also has a key responsibility to ensure that that county does not suffer because they don't have enough resources, because the senator is actually the one who is responsible for the allocation of national revenue for the county, but also providing oversight for the same. So if there's mismanagement, one person actually we can actually hold accountable is the senator, because actually that's their role. The second thing is that the senator is also responsible for promoting and protecting the interest of the county. So that's one person who, as they sit in Nairobi, because they sit in Nairobi, they don't sit in the county.
Yes,
is that they should be thinking about the county interest more than anything else in this country, because you have no other business. Your work, even if you want that high salary that you want, you have to protect the interests of the county. They're also supposed also to legislate, come up with laws that will also ensure that the counties are working very well. Remember that some things that were also not done, like decentralizing some of the local units, whether it's a rural sub-committees. I know that was actually provided for under the County Government Act, but they were not very specific. So they actually have a responsibility to actually come up with legislation to address some of those things. Right. And I'm sure people have even been asking, by the way, what will happen to the cities, to the municipalities, and to the towns? The Local Authorities Act, that's what we used to do. So when all the elections were finalized on the 4th of March, then that was repealed, and now what we have is the Urban and Cities Act. But it's not going to be as haphazard as it was before, where we all used to get excited about wanting to be a city or wanting to be a municipality. These ones are supposed to actually help the economy to grow faster. So for a city is that you must have a population of more than 500,000 people. For a municipality, you must have 250,000 people for you to actually qualify to become a municipality, and for a town, of course, 10,000 people and above. But again, those ones will be managed by the urban cities or municipality boards.
Okay, so again, a lot of management.
But I know next week when we come back, we'll actually go into details of all those things, because people need to understand the structure, because the structure, then you know who you actually need to go and see if there's something that you actually need to deal with at that level.
All right, so to our viewers, do make sure that you tune in next week to ensure that you find out if you do have an issue and you do want to find out who to go to. Then next week on this show that's sponsored by KNICE and the IEBC, then you must tune in and get your answers. But remember, you can also tweet KNICE at KNICE Kenya. You can find them on Facebook, KNICE Kenya, or find more information on their website, knice.go.ke. Susan spoke, Joash, about investment and, of course, revenue as well. What situation are these various counties in? Because just last week, all counties, or the governors, were set to present their budget estimates, and a lot of their budgets had shortfalls, and these counties need a lot more money than they have. Can they look to the national government for money? And if not, how can they fund their counties?
Let's just explain this slowly. The Constitution says that the revenues raised nationally will be shared between the two levels of government, with the county governments getting at least 15%. That is the minimum. And other than the 15%, which is the minimum, we have grants, conditional grants, and others are unconditional grants that the national government can actually give to county governments over and above the 15%. Besides that, you have the equalization fund, which is 0.5% of the national revenue to bring up counties which have been traditionally marginalized in terms of roads, water, electricity, and schools. The confusion which arose last week is that the national government presented its budget to the National Assembly. Of course, it is after the National Assembly has approved that budget that counties will know how much of the national cake has been allocated to county governments.
Right.
Currently, we don't know whether it's 231 billion, 204 billion, 195 billion. There's a lot of confusion. But until Parliament approves the division revenue bill, which they were discussing today, based on that, counties will know that this is our share of the national revenue. Based on that, then they do their budgets. But
they already have done their budget estimates.
They were doing their budget estimates based on proposals which they were given by Commission Revenue Allocation.
All right, so they're yet to do
actual budgets.
Right, okay.
This have to be in place by 14th of June. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's just talk about one of the latest developments, and that is the creation of the Ministry of Devolution. And planning. What role will the ministry have, Susan?
The first role that they actually have is to ensure that there's intergovernmental coordination, because the national government is one arm, but they will be more responsible for ensuring that everything that comes with devolution, because devolution is really huge. It's not just about allocating resources. It's more about also appreciating what can be done at that local level in terms of even the plans that we'll likely be coming up with, and helping them prioritize, because they also have to link that to the Vision 2030, because you see we also have a blueprint, in terms of our development plan, and it has its own flagship project. So you can imagine that at the national level, that is actually what we have in terms of implementation, and I think that the next medium-term plan, 2013-2018, is supposed to be launched by end of June. So they actually have to ensure that there's proper linkage between what the MTP has and also what the different counties also are proposing. Not so much about micromanaging their plans, but just having a clear picture about where are we going to grow economically, is what they're going to do going to add value to our Kenyan economy, because we still want to be a middle income generating country by a certain time. The second thing, of course, that they have is to also manage what Parliament and the county governments will also be doing, whether it's through the summit or through the council, again, just providing that linkage and ensuring that we have sufficient information and database on how things are going to be done. So in general, what they're actually going to do is ensure that devolution is realized, because they actually have to provide that oversight, but there's also intergovernmental relations as we do that, and more importantly is to keep an eye on Vision 2030, which is our plan, and also what the Jubilee Manifesto is all about, because again, we are also implementing a certain manifesto as in the next 5 years. So that's basically what their work is.
I wanted to add something to what Susanna said, which I entirely agree with. Devolution is one of the key bedrocks in our constitution. In fact, it's a national value in Article 10 of the Constitution. And the chapter on the executive, particularly with regard to cabinet secretaries, the Constitution says that the president shall assign implementation of national legislation to different cabinet secretaries. In the context of devolution, we have like 5 pieces of legislation. You needed a cabinet secretary or a ministry to implement those 4. We have been talking about the County Governments Act. We have talked about the Intergovernmental Relations Act. We have talked about the Urban Areas and Cities Act, the Transition to Devolved Government Act, the Public Finance Management Act, which has elements of devolution. And therefore, it was important that the president assigns this responsibility of implementing this legislation to a particular cabinet secretary. So the appointment, the creation of the Ministry of Devolution and Planning is actually very, very critical, because remember, even though we have a new constitution with the national government having its own functions, county governments having their own functions, policy formulation and standards and regulation is still a function of the national government. And therefore, if there's a ministry responsible for devolution, then the national government policies on devolution will have to be implemented by a ministry responsible for that kind of matter.
Okay. All right. Before we wind up, let's just quickly break down to the viewer how they will benefit most from devolution. So, for example, if you are in the county of Narok and you have an issue about, say, sewage, there's too much sewage and you want it to be sorted out, where does that individual go to? Who is their first point of call in that county?
There are two arms of the county government which we've actually elaborated. The first one is the county executive. So the first person that you actually, the highest person is the governor. So most of the time you actually don't need to actually go to the governor. You don't even need to go to the deputy governor. You don't even need to even go to maybe to the county, the cabinet, yes, the executive committee member. In this case now, what we're calling the smaller cabinet ministers, but you have the public servants who are actually working under them. So that's the first entry point if you actually want to use that approach. So whether it's if like now Nairobi has a ministry, a cabinet of youth, culture, and I think they actually combine it to something else, go to the officer who is in charge. If as you proceed, things are not being addressed, and shift higher, keep going up, and you can even meet your governor.
But will an individual have that kind of access to the governor? For example, here with the national government, you don't have very easy access to the president, but there are other people.
Exactly.
So what about access? How does this help the common wananchi with access? Because that's very important.
If you feel that is too complex for you. You can't access the officer, you can't access even the deputy governor, maybe you want to meet the governor. That's still okay, you can still pursue them, but of course, write letters and those kind of things that will actually help you then be able to access them. But remember, we have another arm that is closer, the people that you actually elected to represent you, and those are the county assembly representatives. They are your representatives from each ward. So look for them. Those ones are people who you should actually be able to access and tell them this is actually what we think as a group we want you to address. So he should actually present those issues in the assembly when they meet, or even can actually approach a certain executive committee to actually bring out your issues. But they also have a speaker, a deputy speaker. There's also the public service a board that we talked about. There's a public service in itself. So there are many organs that you can actually use to actually access there. But remember that all the offices are actually based at the county level. The responsibility that we also have as citizens is actually to find out where is our county office based. Like in Nairobi, it's at City Hall. That's where it is. For Kiambu, there was a debate on whether it was actually going to be in Thika or in Kiambu. So just know where it is and just approach them. It doesn't hurt. Go there if you can't access and all the offices are locked, then look for your senator. They should actually be able to sort you out. But don't look for the woman representative.
Why
Because
not?
the women representative is actually not part of the county government. They went there, even if they were elected from the county, at the county level, they actually went direct to the National Assembly.
Okay. And Joash, Susan just touched on this briefly, and before we close, I'd like you to address it. What is the role of the citizen when it comes to devolution? How important is it for the man in the county to play a part in the devolution process?
Devolution is going to fail or succeed if citizens are not involved, if they are uninterested.
Because ultimately it is for them.
Absolutely, it's for them. There are a number of channels. Just to clarify a bit and add on to what my colleague has said, the county government is required to decentralize its services to the lowest levels possible. Devolution is about service delivery. Below the county, you have the sub-county, modeled along the constituency lines.
Right.
Below that, you have the ward. Below that, you have the village. So you see, from your doorstep, if you're in a village in Nairobi, probably your neighborhood, you obviously there's a place where you can go, where you will have the county government officer. Citizens can petition both the county governor and his executive or executive committee, or even petition the county assembly. We have citizen fora. Citizens can do social audits. You know, you can basically even write, a letter, all right, because the county government and the national government are required to ensure that citizens are involved in decisions which affect them. That is the principle of public participation. All these structures are there in legislation. The reason why our people may not be seeing them now is county governments are going to kick off in earnest from 1st of July because they were elected into office in the middle of the financial year. When 1st of July starts, then all these services are going to be devolved, and you'll start seeing some of this because the governors will have money to implement what the law provides.
All right, so lots to look forward to, and essentially it is power to the people.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, all right, Susan and Joash, that's all we have time for now, but thanks very much for joining us on this program.
Thank you very much. Good night.
All right, well, with me in studio, Susan Mwongera, the CEO of the Youth Agenda, and also Joash Dache, the Secretary of the Kenya Law Reform Commission. We've been speaking about the importance of devolution, but the conversation doesn't stop. You can catch more of this next week. Make sure you tune in right here on NTV. But as I've been mentioning, you can get more information on this crucial topic on the KNICE website, knice.go.ke, or on their Twitter page. Ask them questions if you need to. Follow them at KNICE Kenya, or find them on Facebook, which is also KNICE Kenya, for more queries or for more information. But we leave it at that for now. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Smirti Virdiyadhi Mohindra. Have yourselves a good night.
Elewa katiba, jenga nchi yako.